Hello and welcome to episode number 330. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. This is a premium episode and normally this would mean that it's only available to our premium listeners. However, we are making this one available to everyone. We're doing this because if you are a listener to the free Project Management Podcast and you've ever wondered what you might be missing, then, well, here's your chance to listen in to a premium episode. You can find out more at pm-podcast.com/premium. And if you are already one of our premium subscribers, then as always, thank you for your financial support of your favorite podcast. Generally speaking, there are 6 leadership styles: authoritative, democratic, affiliative, pace-setting, commanding, and coaching. Each of these has its time and place. But for you and me as project leaders, project management coaching should be at the top of our list. After all, it is the people working on our projects who get things done. So we want to unlock their potential, and coaching may just be the answer. A little while back, we had Susanne Madsen on the program to discuss her Project Management Coaching Workbook and how it can help unleash your potential. And today, we are going to do a deep dive into various coaching techniques and how those can make you a better project leader. And now, what would you do? Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Susanne Madsen, project leadership coach, author, and speaker.
Hello, Susanne. Once again, welcome.
Thank you, Cornelius. A pleasure.
So we want to talk about coaching. Can you define it for us, please? What does coaching mean?
Yeah, good one. I mean, there are many different definitions, but what I would say to the listeners is that coaching is a way of unleashing someone else's potential. So when we coach, we really help people to help themselves in, let's say, overcoming an issue or in reaching a certain goal. That really means that coaching is non-directive, which is interesting because we're talking about management and coaching today, and we often associate a manager with someone who gives direction. So what we're really saying here is that a coach is someone who does the opposite of command and control. They really listen and they help someone to find the answers for themselves, which is different, right? And that brings us to really 2 different types of coaching, if you like, that I think is important to make clear already at this stage. But the first one is that as a coach, you can be independent. So I'm an independent coach and I help people to find the answers for themselves and move forward in whatever is right for them. The second permutation is that when we coach as a manager, so we just said that managers often give direction, but when we coach as a manager, we refrain from giving a lot of direction because what we really do is we help our employees to upskill and we help them to be successful in reaching their goals. And again, we try to allow them to find the answers for themselves. So that was a long answer to your question, Cornelius. What do you think?
No, but I like it. Coaching, on a very high level, it's a leadership style, but there are other leadership styles as well. And before we go more into detail here, let's do a quick review of these. So we have authoritative, democratic, affiliative, pace setting, and commanding. Can you just give us sort of a high level overview of these 5 before we then deep dive into coaching?
Yeah, sure. So the first one you said authoritative. And by the way, these 6 leadership styles, coaching being the 6th, they're from Daniel Goleman. So they're not my styles. They're kind of, people can Google them and see them out there. So the first one, as you said, is authoritative, also called visionary. Authoritative is a funny word, but really what we mean is that it's a leader who is good at setting the vision, creating the vision, and inspiring people to follow. It's that traditional view of the leader who makes people follow. A authoritative leader will not necessarily tell people how to get there, but they'll paint the big picture and they will enable people to fill in the detail. So they'll paint the big picture, and that's really that their role is to be inspiring. The second one, democratic. Now, that's all about sharing the problem with a group. So asking people, what do you think? And it's really a consensus-driven leadership style. We may think that's a good leadership style, but actually research shows that when we make decisions by consensus, it's not necessarily the best way of making decisions. So I think Democrats...
Hey, I'm from Switzerland. I really resent that, okay? Consensus is what we live by, okay? The whole country does it. It can't be that bad.
Ah, but you moved, didn't you? So actually, it is good when the decisions don't matter so much. It's important that we ask everybody what they think. But consensus-driven just doesn't always produce the best outcomes.
Yes. We're talking about leadership styles here, not government styles anyway. So, sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, right. Interesting. So I've heard people say the same about Holland, by the way. Now, affiliative, which is the next leadership style, is really all about providing harmony. So here we're saying people come first. And as a leader, if I use this style, I don't particularly like disharmony or conflict. So that's not a particularly good style in the long run, but it definitely has its place, as do all of these leadership styles. When you've had two companies, a company being taken over, when you've had redundancies, when people feel unsafe, it's a very good style to use because you want to make people feel better about their jobs, and harmony will become important. The next one is pace setting. This is all about setting the standard. So as a pace setter, I roll up my sleeves and I show you how it's done. I'm not afraid to get in there. I basically set the level, I set the pace, and I'm expecting you to follow me. When I worked for one of the big banks in London, an American bank actually, the predominant style that they had in that company was pace setting. In the long run, it's not a great style because it can alienate people who work with you, because it's just basically my way. My way is the best way. But it can be good in the short term when the team is not performing. The last style is the commanding, which is directive. So this is the old-fashioned command and control. Do as I tell you, or else there are consequences. And I think this is the traditional hard style management, where that's definitely not effective in the long run because, again, it alienates people. It's not consultative or engaging or collaborative at all. But again, it has its uses. For instance, if the building is burning, get out. If there is a crisis, I need to give direction. The problem is that we live in a world where there are fires all the time, right? There's always a crisis. So we may tend to overuse this style simply because it's quicker. And that's a misuse of it. We shouldn't be doing that.
Authoritative, democratic, affiliative, pace setting, commanding. Considering that we have so many other leadership styles, why are we focusing on coaching right now in our discussion? Is it better than the others?
Coaching in combination with the authoritative, or also called visionary style, have been proven to be the most effective in the long term. So as we said, they all have their place. But coaching is interesting also because it is the exact opposite of that commanding style, which is, I think I see some project managers when they start out, they think, well, I'm the manager now. Do as I tell you, and they have problems because the people they're instructing on their teams, sometimes they know much more than they do. They're subject matter experts. They have more experience. And the project manager feels out of their depth because they've only been taught this command and control style, but they're uncomfortable in it and it doesn't work. And they don't really have another style. And I think that's where coaching can really help them.
At the end of our previous interview, when we talked about overcoming resistance to change, after I stopped recording, you said, we forgot to mention that a large portion of my book, The Power of Project Leadership, is actually about overcoming resistance to change. So let me ask this here before we forget. The Power of Project Leadership, your book, does it talk about coaching? Does it talk about how to combine authoritative with coaching? Is that part of it?
It is. Now, must I just say that my first book, the Project Management Coaching Workbook, is all about coaching.
Okay.
And the second book is all about engaging and being a leader in the project context. So they both touch on it in various ways, yes.
All right, then.
Because it's really a theme that everything I do surrounds around this theme.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does it look like then when a manager coaches?
So when a manager coaches, they are really helping the employee to find the answer for themselves. What does that mean? Well, it means that we all are being asked, probably as a manager, on a daily basis about something. We're being asked for advice. So let's take an example. An employee comes up to you, or let's say you're a program manager, and a project manager comes up to you and says, "Can you tell me how to do the steering committee presentation? I'm unsure." Now, I think 9 out of 10 people, or 8 out of 10 or whatever, would say, "Yeah, sure. You just start with actions from last meeting, you go through any changes, you go through the financials, you go through the risks and issues, bang, 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 there you go. Does that help?" And they go, "Yeah, that will get me started," and off they go. Now, what the manager will do in a coaching situation instead, if they use that style, is that they will ask questions. They won't just give the quick answer. They will help the employee to find the answer for themselves. So they might ask, "Well, okay, so tell me what is the goal of that steering committee presentation? What do you want your steering committee members to feel at the end of the presentation?" Those simple questions are going to make that employee think, what do they really want out of it? Yeah, what's the purpose here? And I think that's a simple example of how, as a manager who coaches, will approach that situation differently. They won't just tell.
And what are some of the dilemmas that a manager coach will find herself in?
Yeah, that's a very interesting angle because I am now an independent coach. But I have also been a manager as a coach. So as an independent coach, normally my only agenda is to help my coachee achieve their goals. I can be completely confidential. I don't have any dilemmas. I don't have anyone I need to report to. That is, I think, the purest form of coaching. My only agenda is my client's agenda. But when I'm a manager who coaches, I am first and foremost a manager. And that means that I actually have an agenda because I'm responsible for my employee's performance. So I want my employee to do well. I want my employee to perform well and to do a good job. I choose to use a coaching style to achieve that purpose for me and for my employee. But I'm still wearing 2 hats, you see, because I'm a manager first, and then secondarily, I want to help my employee find their own answers. So I think it's important that people understand, when am I being what? And how impartial am I? Am I truly serving my employee through coaching, or am I just using coaching as an excuse to get anyway what I want, right? My agenda. And I think that can be dangerous, because when you coach someone, people can really begin to trust you and think, oh, that's my manager's really wanting me to develop skills and to do it on my own. And that's all true, but it must not be misused from the manager's point of view, if you see what I'm saying. I think it has to be treated carefully. When people open up, you have to treat that trust with care.
You live in London, but our listeners are all around the world. Let's assume they like what they hear and they would like you, Susanne Madsen, as their coach. Would you be open to coaching somebody who's all the way around the world?
I do already. I have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've coached someone from Atlanta for since December, and we're now in August. So that's 8 months? I can't count. And I'm coaching someone for California as well. And we coach either via Skype, but Google Plus is really good now. So it works very, very well. So I'm very used to that way of working. It's very effective. Right. Yeah, it's very effective.
What are the building blocks of coaching?
Why, are you interested, Cornelius?
No. I actually have a coach myself.
Yeah.
And we're sort of coaching each other via Skype. We meet every other week, and we both are small business owners. He is actually a professional coach. And I help him more on the business side, and he helps me more on the executive coaching style side. So we help each other build the side that we are lacking. And yeah, no, I was more asking for our listeners.
I know.
Because the more I hear you talk about your expertise, the more I'm like, I wonder if I should kick my other coach out and just go with Susanne instead. Yeah. So coming back to my question, what are the building blocks of coaching?
So because we're saying that coaching is not just being directed, well, it's the opposite of giving direction. It's really about relating to another person, because I need to help that other person find out what is true to them, what's the right way for them. That means that I need to be trained in really listening. And in coaching, we talk about 3 levels of listening. Level 1 means that I'm actually listening to my own internal voice. So I'm actually thinking about what to cook for dinner, and oh my God, I hope that this finishes soon because I have another call to get onto. It's my internal dialogue. Level 2 means that I'm present, I'm listening to you. But in coaching, we're aiming for level 3. We call that global listening. It means that I'm listening with my entire body, with all my cells. I use my intuition to really take in what's going on for the person I'm coaching. And that's what we're trained in. And that is one of the very building blocks that enable us to ask better questions, that again enable the coachee to understand what the right solution for them is, how they can move forward. So they're the building blocks: relating, building rapport, building trust, listening, and asking insightful questions.
In one of your articles, I also read about the GROW model. That's GROW, all capitals. Can you explain the GROW model to us? It's a goal, reality, options, and will.
Yes, certainly. So the GROW model is the GROW model. Sorry, the GROW model is one of the absolute cornerstones in coaching. Most people who go on any kind of coaching course will learn about the GROW model. For people who are not coaches but listening to this conversation, I would say don't try to use it as a strict framework, but take it in and be aware of it at the back of your mind. Now, what does it mean? G stands for goal. That means that in the beginning of a conversation, you need to understand from the person you want to coach, what is the goal? What are we talking about? What is your problem? What are we trying to overcome? Or what does it look like when the problem is resolved? So you somehow have to frame it. So let's go back to the question of how can I do my steering committee presentation? If you're coaching that person, you would say, okay, so what are you trying to achieve with your presentation? That's a simple goal-setting question. Once you've established, okay, what we're talking about, we move to reality. Because coaching is not a chit-chat. We've got to be specific about what we're talking about, and we've got to have a specific outcome. So now we know what we're talking about, we move to reality. And reality means that we're exploring what's going on right now. So you say, okay, so tell me about the problem. What is going on right now? What have you already tried? In the case of steering committee presentations, what have you done already? What happened last time you did your steering committee presentation? What feedback have you received? All types of questions that explore reality, what's really going on for you right now within this particular topic. When you've explored that and you understand, actually, I know now what's going on for my coachee, I would say over 50% of a coaching conversation, sometimes even 70%, happens in reality. You explore what's going on. You ask questions. Then we move to O in the GROW model, options, which is all about, okay, so what could you do? We discussed everything that's going on now, but what are your options really for resolving this? What could you do? What can you do to move forward? What would you do? Typical coaching questions. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail, etc.? So you're really trying to understand what options do we have for moving forward. When you've explored all the options, you move to the last part of the GROW model, will. What will you do? It's very important that we finish with an action. Otherwise, it's just a conversation. So, what are your next steps? What will you do? What type of support do you need? By when will you take these actions? So it's very firm. It's a very firm way to close. Have you come across that one before, Cornelius?
No, it was completely new to me. Primarily, of course, I'm not a coach. I'm a project manager.
Yeah.
So it is actually quite interesting to hear. However, you mentioned this earlier on, if we have a fire, really difficult situation where command and control is needed, don't coach, command and control. Are there some other times when you would recommend, better not to coach here, choose another style?
Yes. You mentioned one of the reasons there. Another reason is when you have an employee in front of you who has generally a low skill level.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who's a junior, let's say you've got a graduate, and the graduate has been asked to come up with a budget. And the graduate comes to you and asks, could you give me some direction? I have no idea. I've never seen a budget before.
Yes.
You can't start asking them, what are you trying to achieve and what did you do last time? Because they have no clue. So it's not appropriate. You would almost humiliate them, I think. Of course, you can try to guide them a little bit by not being too directive, but general coaching doesn't work so well when people generally don't know. So that combined with when there's little time in a crisis situation, when the stakes are high, there are times when a more directive approach would be better.
Okay. And what is the difference between coaching and simply advising somebody?
So when you advise someone, certainly my understanding of the word advise means that you are telling them what to do. And I think mentors do that quite a lot. So when you're being mentored by someone, let's say someone more senior in the organization, you can ask them for advice. I have a difficult stakeholder. Do you know that person? What would you do? And they'll tell you, you know what? I'll give you good advice. I met that person 2 weeks ago and this is what I did. So that they're giving you advice. In coaching, we don't. We will give a question instead. We'll say, okay, so tell me about that person. Tell me about how you tried to approach that person. What was the outcome? Yeah, what could you do differently? So we would use the GROW model to help them see the situation, to help them understand how they could do it differently. We wouldn't just give them advice.
Okay, understood. That makes a lot of sense actually to me, because I've always been pretty unclear between coaching and advising. That is 100% clear now.
I think actually the difference between coaching and mentoring is exactly this point. Because as a coach, we don't give advice, but mentors do give advice because they are oftentimes an expert in that situation. A coach actually doesn't have to be an expert in the situation. They're an expert in the coaching process. They're an expert in listening, asking questions, etc. It's very different setups.
All right. Final question for you. Let's bring it back to your book, the Project Management Coaching Workbook. What are some of the steps, the techniques, the first things that our listeners can do in their daily dealings with their team members who need guidance, who need advice, that they can become more of a coach to them?
Yeah. I would just give, I think, one piece of advice for people.
Right.
I'm giving advice. which is, first of all, notice when people come and ask you a question. In that moment, you have a choice. You can either give them what you believe is the answer. You can be directive, right? Or there is a moment, there's an opportunity for a coaching experience, which is, instead of just giving them the answer, ask a question instead. Ask a clarifying question. That is the first step to coaching. Whenever someone comes and asks you something, which isn't just straightforward yes or no, ask a question back that will help them clarify how to do it instead of just telling them.
All right, wonderful. I'll start doing that, definitely, and I hope our listeners will too. So once again, the book is called The Project Management Coaching Workbook, and then of course there's also The Power of Project Leadership, both written by Susanne Madsen. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me, Cornelius.
And that was our interview with Susanne Madsen on coaching. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com/premium. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. And when you write, please do tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. A good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Until next time.